Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for making time for the Yahrtzeit of my Rebbe, Moshe Shapira. Everything Lili Nishmas, Rabbeinu Moshe ben Yitzchak Meir. So I just sat down right now, so allow me to indulge just doing the customary. We make brachas. That's the minute to make brachas Lili Nishmas. So the proper seder brachas is Simon is Maga Esh, Maga, right? Maga Esh, Mizonos, Guffin, Etz, right? Adama, Shahako. So, would you pass us those chocolate balls are actually Mizonos. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Mizonos. Can you pass me the wine, please? And a cup. Thank you. L'cham. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam b'pei hagafen. The pecans, please. Makes a difference to me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam b'orei pri ha'etz. The peas, please. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam b'orei pri ha'adama. Looks like little sausages. Thank you. Start doing real eating. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol yavo. Cham. Shlomo, please. Just don't hold back. Don't hold back. It's a tinus tomorrow. So, like I said, I want to before we begin, with an inside account for this year. This year is not a normal year. This is, everyone knows because tomorrow, Erev Shabbos is going to be a tinus. Asar B'Tevis is one of these few Tanesim that come out on Erev Shabbos. As far as I know, by the other Tanesim, it's impossible in our Luach, and this also happened, once. Thank God, not very often. It's just this year is like a very special year. Davar Mer Darsheni, besides that, Purim is going to come out on Erev Shabbos, which means in Yahrtzeit Purim Meshulash. Very special. But what you probably have noticed is that this was one of the years where Parshas Vayigash was not a Shabbos Hanukkah. It's amazing. In all Sfar Makdoshim that publish on Hanukkah, and my Sefer on Bereshis included the Avdil, right? It's always Vayigash Hanukkah. Now, thank God, I had what to say on Hanukkah in the Parshas leading up to Vayigash. So it's shtiklach in the Sefer on that cross over to Hanukkah ever since Yahrtzeit. But this is like it's always Vayigash came out, right? And sometimes it's Vayeshev also when there's two Shabbosos. And over here this year, Vayigash came out after Hanukkah. And we have something amazing. Asar B'Tevis always, in a regular year, always comes out Parshas Vayigash. Dok V'Tishkach, right? This is like an amazing year, right? That Asar B'Tevis comes out Parshas Vayigash. It's a very rare year. And now it's very apropos, so let's just talk about quickly, right, what we've said in previous years, how apropos it is. That, generally speaking, Asar B'Tevis comes out, Parshas Vayigash. Asar B'Tevis is is the beginning of the siege on Yerushalayim, so it has it's like the beginning of Golus, right? And Parshas Vayigash, Lama Parsha Zu Stuma. So Rashi says, and in the first pshat of fish this by name, Yitzhak Minagos Shitchil L'Shabdam. Yitzhak's eyes and hearts closed. That the shibud started. Now we addressed this in my book. That this seemingly is not true because it's mufurish in Parshas Shmos. Vayomas Yosef v'chol echad v'chol adorahu. Then v'yakom chadash shelo yadas Yosef. Right, and Chazal said mufurish. It's clear from the psukim. The shibud did not start until all the shvatim died. So shelo yadas doesn't mean that the shibud started after Yosef died. It started after Levi, who was the oldest. The last of the brothers to be nifter, right? That's when the goal started. But like also Pshuta Shomikra, the whole Kol Adorahu is the door of the Shvatim. So why is it saying Parshas Vayigash? It's Parshas Tuma, it's the Asian this way. Name so Mitzaras Hashibud. Shibud didn't start till a generation later, right? Thank you very much. Right, and what does that do with Parshas Tuma? So now, and why? When you build pyramids, it's your back that hurts. Your back, your arms, your legs. Right. So, so what does that Rashi mean? The other pshat in Rashi is a little bit more straightforward. Be case God's case for nistami mental is blocked off from him. But the first pshat is like it rings nice, but when you break it down, it seems to not make any sense. Why a nine lave, right? People didn't start till a generation later. What does that have to do with Parshas Tuma? Right? So we said, in previous years, and be magdim with what we say in Birchas, Kriya Shema every single day. Lishmoa, Lomod Lamed, Lishmor Velasos Lakayas, called the very Samutar Salababa. Right? So you want understanding, right? Right, and all types of forms of wisdom, so much not just to learn, but even to teach, to uphold. That's everything, right? So we go on, what's that hamshach? We just have for being a love and a haskell, l'shmoa, lomod lamed, lishmar sassalakayim. It's also v'hayar einenu b'tzar secha v'dabek libenu v'tayim and leiv. Right? This way, name v'lim b'tzar mitras hashibud. Right? So we've said in previous years, but it never gets old because it's true. Right? That there's two different madregas in Torah. Right? That there's you can understand Torah as like any type of intellectual discipline. You can know it very, very clear, right? Very, very clear, right? And so not just that you can understand it, even so you can teach it over, right? But that type of academic clarity, you miss out that the Torah's Divrei Elokim Chaim, right? It's not to get a little bit more specific, and this is something which we have not said previously. But to give another, all the other chachmas, right, are to describe something, right? So physics describes energy, so chemistry describes the interaction between atoms and molecules, and biology describes. It's not the thing itself; it's a description of it. It's not the thing itself, right? Is that what Torah is? It's like Torah description of something. No, Torah is Divrei Elokim Chaim, or Chaim Kayomim, Nemanim v'Nechamodim. It's alive. Torah is the thing itself. Torah is not a description of how to do the mitzvahs. I'll bring you a simple raya. What came first, Torah or mitzvahs? Right? Istako Borais, so Bara Alma, right? So Torah is not a description. You'd think halacha is a description of how to do the mitzvahs. Not that way. Really, thank you, Lisa. Really the other way around. I think it's me and you tonight, and we have a tie-ins tomorrow. Right, we got this. Right, so the Torah's the opposite. Mitzvahs is a certain manifestation of Torah, not that Torah is a description of mitzvahs. Right. So and Am Yisrael by Har Sinai was made on this. Kolam roim esakolos. They saw a sound, Rashi says, because when it's just words, so you think it's a description side. They saw it. I mean, it's a mahus onto its own, right? That's what it means, roim esakolos, right? And of course, when you trap into Torah as Divrei Elokim Chaim, that when a person attains that level, that's called dveikus. All right. So sometimes there's a mitzvah and you're carrying out the tzivuyim, right? And the tzivui that comes out of his mouth that you hear is just a medium for you to no, right? Right. Since the tzivui is alive, it makes a real bridge between you and the mitzvah because it's something alive. It's not just a telephone. Right? So it's a gilui of the mitzvah himself. Right. So that means when of course, if you have to accept it minas lasos, right? But when you do it, then it's really connected. It's not a mitzvah and a mitzvah, and you're just there's like a real continuum of dveikus between the mitzvah and the mitzvah with the real living bridge of the tzivah. Right? That's what it means. V'hoyer einenu b'sorasecha v'dabek libeinu b'mitzvosecha. That what we want to daven for even further is not just that Torah should be intellectually clear. We should be able to see it. V'hoyer einenu, like roim esakolos, and v'dabek libeinu, because we understand that the words of Torah, Divrei Elokim Chaim, right? That's when you're experiencing dveikus. And that Chaim writes about it in Shar Dalit. Right, that the mitzias of a person who learns Torah is in a mitzias of dveikus mamash mein olam haba, right? And that's which he has even lamala from mitzvahs. It's the Divrei Torah in the mitzvahs, and that's the v'dabek libeinu b'mitzvos. You do the mitzvahs in your arms and legs. Dabek libeinu b'mitzvosecha, that the mitzvahs will be a medium of which to experience, dveikus halev in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's because of the Divrei Torah, the living Divrei Torah that's in the mitzvahs. And so that's what's missing, that's what gets lost in translation. We're going to talk more about this later. You want to set Moshe Shapira off, mention art school. You want to set him off, right? Right. One of the things that happened at Soper Tevis is that they were metargim the Torah. Enach Torah chol litargim kol tzorcha. From Chazal Masechet Sofer. It's also kosher k'moshe nasa ego. Right? Torah is when you translate Torah, so maybe the chitzonius of the information can be tried, but you miss out on the chiyus, the chayim, the roim esakos, the divrei elokim chayim. That gets lost in translation. Right? That gets lost in translation. Right? That of course, it's over Parshat. Hello? Come, Yaakov. Right. Yaakov, it's a lot of brachas to make. Maga Esh.
Maga Esh, Mizonos, Gefen.
It's
Adama Shahako.
That's right. So, right. So these chocolate balls are Mizonos. Right?
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway. This Shlomo Weber just moved you from Florida. We were speaking yesterday. We should be moving from New York to Florida.
That's it.
Right.
Oh, smart.
Secret agent over here.
Yeah.
I relate to our Weberman.
Yeah, cousin.
Sorry, Woodard.
The name means something here, that's for sure.
You're known the second you walk into a room.
Cham. Please, start making brachas. Nishmas the Rebbe.
All right. Wow.
So this is Midonos, and this is Hagefen, and then you'll find your way around.
Thank you so much.
It's a fast day tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's I want to tell you, Shlomo, it's an amazing thing. You say you want to have a kesher to me. Yeah, sure, you may have the wrong guy, but listen, yeah, because I was talking with Moshe and Tom Rav Yaakov Weinberg, my two Rebbeim who made me. Rav Yaakov Weinberg died on Shiva Sabbatam, and Rav Moshe Shapira died on Asar B'Tevis.
Last time.
It's like, so if there's there's a minute to fast on the day your parent dies, from Blinetta, I was able to be kind by my mother's 2 Yahrtzeit so far. But Yom Shemeis Rabo, I have no choice. They were nifted. It's wild, isn't it? It's wild.
That's not normal.
That's not normal. My two Rabbanim that built me, some of the ones are Sorbativs.
Wow.
Jeez.
Guy saying behind that.
Anyway, so they talk about Asar B'Tevis. They translated the Torah. That's one of the things. They made the 13 changes for Talmud HaMelech. And so, what's the, because Ein HaTorah Chol, we targum Kol Sorah. It's not possible. Unclus, no, because Unclus, we say, is Sinai. He said, Unclus Agar from his Makav Lazar, Sinai. That means no. That's different because that was a targum that was we were guided Sinai from we got the rest of the Torah, so that's safe, right? That's safe, right? Now that which the Rambam wrote in Arabic because he originally it's not a translation. He originally expressed himself that way. Right? It's not a time. It says that the Maran was in Arabic and the Parshas Vayigash was in Arabic. That's not a taina. Because he originally said it that way, just like Reb Chaim and Reb Shimon said shir in Yiddish, right? That's not called targum. If the Torah was nischadesh me'ikoro in that language.
The Torah Shabbat Peh, you have to write in Lashon
All right, so that's why when they came to write it, they wrote in Lashon HaKodesh. They were rabbinical Hebrew, so that Moshe Shapira said, he pointed out. It's a historical fact. During Bayis Sheni, he didn't spoke Aramaic. From all the shots of the Ksuvitz and the Gittin, which are brought down the Mishnayos. The Dain Babi Lichi Binoi. It's for Yehuda. You have to say the Dain. It's the mixture in Gittin, right? So the Zar, which is from that Kufa, was written in Aramaic, right? Right? Yidden spoke Aramaic. Right, so that's why all the Ksuvitz and the Gittin, their shtoros, all written, their civil affairs were in Aramaic. Why was Mishnah written in Hebrew? Right? So Moshe used to say that because it's Mishnah is a mamutza, it's an intermediary between Torah B'Chsav and Torah B'Al Peh. It's a book. The chiddush of Mishnah is that Torah B'Al Peh became a book because until there was always something like Mishnah, but until the popularization of Mishnah, right? So Torah B'Al Peh was you'd start with a pasuk, and start darshaning on it, and it was all built as a pirush around the mikra. Mishnah was like it's a book in its own right. So since now you're making it a chibur, you're in Lashon HaKodesh. Mm-hmm. And he told us something very interesting when he gave us. He said this over 2 times, but at one time they said it. He says that he was made that he knows that there are teimanim that read Mishnayos with like trup, cantillations, as if it's kisah. It says v'kacha ra'ui la'asot, because the book, that's the chiddush of Mishnah. It's Parshas Vayigash, took on a form. It's also a book. Right? So it's interesting, the Chidush HaRim points out, by the very first Mishnah in Shas, so Menatak Mabar, right? So Tana Hechakoi. Say, maybe should you at least introduce that there's such a thing, as Kriyashma first. He's asked when Tana Krokoi. Right, the Tana was Taka built around the Mishnah, and the Chusharim says this idea that even when they started learning Mishnah as a book in its own right, they still tried to keep the old style of being masmechet to a pasuk. So the Maggid Shir, before he began to teach Mishnayos, before he started, he would say, b'shach b'chav kumer. He would say the pasuk and start try to hold on to the old way, building Torah B'Al Peh around the pasuk. So that's what it means, Tana Akrokai.
He would say the pasuk was the darshaning, or
He would start the shir by saying the pasuk.
it was a random pasuk.
Not random pasuk. You know, he knew he was going to say. He was going to say b'shach b'chol u'mecha, and then start darshaning Maseches brachas in response to hold on to the old style of building the Torah Sheba'al Peh around psukim, like the Midrashei Halacha, like the Mechilta. Right. Yeah. But anyway, we're deviating. We're trying to get back to if we already daven, Vino Abarachman, Hamarachir, same vein Lahavinu Lahaski, Lishmo, Limod Olam, Shosasakayim. What are we saying further? B'hayar Einenu B'Sorasecha, V'Davet Libenu Mitzvosecha. So to say it in short form, what I was telling Shlomo is that Torah's alive, Torah's real. Torah's not a description of how to do mitzvahs, because the Torah was out there before mitzvahs existed. Before mitzvahs, it was black fire and white fire, Kram Shnivra Olam. Right, Torah's alive. But we daven that we should be able to resolve V'hayar Einenu B'Sorasecha. You should see, right? Not just hear, but see. And also when you reach Torah, that's Divrei Torah, that's V'dabek Libenu B'Mitzvosecha. Then mitzvahs is not just about obedience, but mitzvahs is about bringing Torah to physical fruition. So Imela creates a dveikus, and it's V'dabek. You do your mitzvahs with your arms and your legs. V'dabek Libenu B'Mitzvosecha. Right. So now this is true about all of Torah, but this is certainly true about Chochmas HaKabbalah, Chochmas HaNister, right? This is not stam philosophy. This is describing reality itself at its fundamental level. And now that's more than like we're saying. These Divrei Torah actually make that reality, which is the real world, the spiritual world that the physical world tries to keep up with. This nishtalshel from it tries to keep up with, right? They say like this, my Rebbe would probably kill me for giving this mashal for him, right? But what kind of, Chabad in Chabad Chassidus, they say that when the Mezritcher Magid first went to the Baal Shem Tov, he thought he knew Kabbalah better than the Baal Shem Tov, right? He didn't understand what the big deal was. So the Baal Shem Tov said, "Listen, you learn Kabbalah?" I said, "Yeah, sure, I know Kabbalah." So he opened up a passage. It doesn't say which Kabbalah sefer. Say, explain to me, this passage over here, right? And the Maggid said, "That's not pshat." Maggid looked at that. That is pshat. There is no other pshat to say. This is that. Watch me. I'll say pshat. And then when the Baal Shem started saying the fire came out, they were mukaf esh, right? And the malachim and koiches that were described over there, right, in that passage, mamish appeared. And the Maggid freaked out. That's when it was makabel. And the Baal Shem Tov said, the pshat that you said was technically correct, but there was no life in it. There was no life in it, right? There was no chayim in it, right? Now, I say it with chayim, and that's what I'll teach you how to do. I don't really like that. That you should just relate to it as information. Right. So, and that's what's missing in all these translations. Get lost in translation. You lose the mahus of it. You get a description of it. It's nothing that happened on Asar B'Tevis. Nothing that happened on Asar B'Tevis is that Ezra Sofer was nifter. Now, Ezra Sofer, he was the head of the Anshe Knesset Agdol. That was his best. Chazal described it, there was Kufchav Skedim, 120 Skedim, Ubeinehem Kama Nevi'im. Right? That was you find that Lashon Chazal. There was a 120 Skedim. Amongst them were Nevi'im, like Chag, Yisrael, Malachim, they're all part of that Bezdin. And Nevuah is Torah Shebechsav. That's what gets put into the Holy Scrolls, Nevuos, right? Right. Ezra Sofer died. He was the Ezra, and we heard this from Moshe. Sofer. He was he was a bridge still to the era of Torah Shebechsav, the Sofer, right? Right. When we lost Ezra Sofer, we lost our bridge, the world of Nevuah. We lost our bridge. Right. So in Nevuah is not information. Nevuah you experience, you see. It's called a choizet. Another is called a seer. Right. You experience. You're not getting information. You see these things. It's royal mesakol. And that's the tragedy happened on Asur B'Tevis. Right? Now it's interesting. The Lashon of Mesachet Sofrim is that by Talmud Melech was a big thing because was also Yom Kashek Yom Shenasa Bo Egel. He Eina Torah Targum Kol Torah. Like the day they translated the Torah for Talmud Melech, we don't think we commemorate Asur B'Tevis. It was like the day they made the Egel, right? Because the Torah cannot be translated properly. What's the kesher? Right? Right. So Pshat is like this, by MAAMAR Har Sinai, right? The Amitzo, call Morim Mitzakos. By the second Luchas, don't say nothing like that. Second Luchas, there was no fanfare, right? Now, probably spiritually, there was just as much fanfare as by the first Luchas, the first Mount Torah, right? But couldn't see it anymore. Right? We went down in Madrega, right? And with that, I explained the steer in Chazal. Right? In Parshas Mishpatim, right? It says Rashi brings the Chazal. It's not a Gemara; it's a Medrash that Moshe El Mishpatim should Potzim, right? That don't think I'm just going to tell them Mishnah because Mishnah it's Surasa. I'm say that I'm going to teach them until they know the law Baal Peh in its proper formulation. No, very much. You have to. You have to teach them Tamei Adavar, the Shulchan Aruch Umuchan Lecha. Also the Tam. They should have reasoning. They should have Gishmak in it. Understand it well. Don't just give them the codified law. If you teach them accurately, Tam. Right. So that Rashi over there in Mishpatim seemingly goes against a Gemara in the Dorim. Sov lecha Divrei Torah, so whatever lashon of kisisa roughly. So lecha, right? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu only gave Pula Shel Torah only to Moshe. The Nog but Tovas Ayin v'Natznu Yisrael. Right? Pula Shel Torah he only gave Moshe, but Moshe was generous and he shared it with us. Right? Wait a minute. You got to give them the Tamei Adavar. And the Mishnah and the Gemara in the Durham says, listen, Pul Shel Torah, it's only because of Moshe's generosity. No. I said, Moshe, look at context. Parshas Mishpatim was said before Maaseh. Right? Parshas Kisisa, that whole story written after the Maaseh. See, before Maaseh, Chom, Roy, Mesakoilos, we had the capacity to have Talmei Torah, right? And for us, even Paraduma wouldn't have been a mystery on our original Madrega, right? We could not just get the information of Torah, but we were able to be connected to the pure spiritual essence of the Torah, because the body was pure also. Parshas Kisisa is talking about Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't nifkam by the chet, he wasn't involved. It was in Shemayim when it happened, and he retained his original madrega. Avata po amodi modi, right? So the Baruch says, "I'm only giving you Tamei, who pull a shoulder." Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want to, accept. He wants to accept me. He didn't want to be satisfied that he was not, but Tosai v'nasno liYisrael, right? Oh yeah, we fell in our madrega. We couldn't see, and the Chet Ego did that to us. As it were, Chet Ego was like, things get lost in translation. We fell out of the loop. We got lost, that we can't access the full thing itself. Just the information of it filters down to us. But Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't have it. Right? But that's what happened in Mitzrayim. by when Yaakov was nifter. So Rashi says in Parshas Vayikra, Lamar Revachos Mishamshos, the break between the parshas. What's the purpose? In the Sefer Torah, it's like a 9-letter break. So Rashi says that it actually is connected that in Shemayim, that Koshel gave Moshe Revach ben partial Litzboni, gave him space to think. The Parsha Stuma represents no space to think. No space to think. When Yaakovinu died, Nistama Einehem V'Libam Shalisah. Of course, the physical Sheba didn't start. Right? That only started. They started building pyramids a whole generation later. Right? But Yaakovinu gave us perspective. Gave us eyes and heart. Right? As I'll say, Kol Mi She'ein Bo Das, Sof Golem Imkoma. He was our das, which we said with perspective, eyes and heart, the Einaim and Lev. When we lost Hakvidu, we lost the Einaim and Lev, and that's really where Golos starts. When you lose your connection to the essence of the thing, it's only a matter of time till you lost your anchor. You're only dug in superficially, you're not dug in deeply. You lost your anchor, so you're eventually going to go into Golos. The Parshas tomorrow. But Moshe Rabbeinu, would that happen to us again after all, we wouldn't have it, right? Nogba Tovas Ayin, not Tzili Yisrael. So I've said in all previous years, from the Shloshim of my Rebbe, when I was maspedim in the White Shul, and I've said it, because the truth just is, right? And it's so apropos when Asor B'Tevis comes out together, the Yahrtzeit comes out together, Parshas Vayigash, say that all these Yesodis that we have in the Maran, the Lesha, in the Sifrei Kabbalah. I mean, I guess you could try to unpack it, with a Hebrew English dictionary and a Gastro. Don't touch our school, right?
Mm-hmm.
But whatever, you can imagine people made a machal. I mentioned this by the original. I said it's by the. People call it to make a machal for the cover of art school. They must be doing something really wrong if people love them so much. Really. That's a story from Chaim Volozhin, right? That Volozhin wasn't a rich town, right? But so that only would come to town collecting, it's a Yidden, but listen, I'm also not well off, give him one kopek, and Rav Chaim Volozhin, the Rav of the town, Rav Shiva, he was the one with he was the bleeding heart. So he would go and knock on doors with the guy, get him something, to leave the house down with something, right? Then one guy came to town, right? And he had such a sob story. He would hear half the story, would start crying and turn over the house and give him any spare cash he has. Right? So the guy didn't need to go to Chaim Volozhin. He was cleaning up, he was cleaning up the town all by himself, right? And then he said, save Chaim Volozhin for last, right? He'll probably get some really big somehow. Because even the pshutim, that generally are a little bit tightwad, gave him, Kal V'chomer. Chaim Volozhin may have heard, may have not have heard, but he took one look at the guy and slammed the door and said, get out of my face. The Pella, the Rav, he gives away all his spare cash and then would walk around with the oni trying to get him a little bit. Yeah. And this guy, he melted our hearts. Right? A few months later, the truth comes out. Right?
Scam.
Yeah. The guy was a Mechumad, converted to Christianity. Right? The old story was false. And not only that, he was in a good mood that he cleaned up so well. He gave a big nadava to the Catholic Church.
Wow.
Right? So they went to Chaim Volozhin. They said, Rebbe, now we know you have Ruach HaKodesh. You can't deny it anymore. Right? We always said, you can't deny it. Right? So Chaim Volozhin said, no Ruach HaKodesh whatsoever. Right? It's simple. It's simple math. When a real oni comes to town, you guys don't give us. Right? Only because the Yitzhar stops you from giving. Over here, the Yitzhar didn't stop you. I knew it couldn't be good. Right? Whatever. So you get it. If something's really popular, Ask yourself, what are they doing wrong at the Sitra Achros Mosque? Right. Anyway, answer the as I was saying, these Yehuda from especially in our lowly generation, Yehuda in the Maran and Goyin and the Leshem and in the Zohar and Ari. I guess we could try to unpack it, based on our knowledge of Hebrew and try to make sense out of it. But even so, it'd be very abstract information, right? But Moshe Nog but Moshe Shapira Nog but he was Zocha each time. He told me he wouldn't tell me who was Mashal. Passed him on. So, Ani Ekarti Anashim Shata Lo Takir Bolam. I don't know. He wouldn't say, but he said Baker. He worked very hard. It was Zocha to be Dubnik, and he could give these things over so clear. It was to get a v'hayar ein of the Dubnik, right? Yeah, that's why I went to learn from him. I left Baltimore one night with the blessings of my other Rebbe, Rabbi Yaakov Barber, and he said, Moshe makes things clear. Right? I left with a pair of underwear, and that was it. Crazy story. But,
What do you mean you left? You left to what?
left Baltimore one night.
Go to shop?
Money I scraped together working as head lifeguard in Camp Roma.
No way.
Way back when they first started. Yeah, right. I still have my sweatshirt from. I still wear it.
I'm also an older boy.
Really? I was a head lifeguard in '92.
I wasn't there yet.
Okay. Anyway, I'll show you my sweatshirt when you're done. Anyway, kids are, just went there, with no plan whatsoever, which we're going to talk about later tonight. I was macharish this year about my Rebbe. I went with no plan whatsoever, not a place to sleep overnight. Got to Israel, and Moshe, but that was it. That's what I gave. He explained it so well. That's not just this abstract, ephemeral, Like it was get a v'hayar einenu v'tabek. That's benog b'tola nasal yisrael. You overcame, the Parsha Stuma, broke through it, and gave us the or, and gave us the dvekas. And, he explained it so well that not just that was rational, and not, but it was real, tangible, right? Welcome Hasbar the Yehuda that I wanted from him, and I pursued him. He had his own creative ideas also. But what I was after was, how he could make these Yehudas that sound very, far out, clear, clear to the point that it's not just well explained, it's real. It's real. Something that you could feel, something that you could cling to. Right? And all this I said in previous years, from the Shloshim until, including last year. And it always worked out like, clockwork. Because his Yahrtzeit, that's Rebbe Davis, Parshas Vayigash, all shtim. And here we have this year. That's quite a strange year. Whereas I think we discussed this yesterday. You never, maybe it was with Ari Hurt, your brother-in-law, that the Gates is not Shabbos Hanukkah.
Right.
Never happens, right? Now we have also everything, that everything moved forward. We have Vayigash coming out together with Asur, which almost never happens. The kesher between Asur, as we explained, over the last half an hour. I'm sorry, I apologize to our audience out there in Radio Land. The finally getting to the MAAMAR of this year. But the Vayigash Elav Yehuda. Wow. So there's a very cryptic lashon of the Zohar. If the storm understand that the Zohar is not just talking derech HaGaon, but talking directly about Yosef and Yehuda. That's how the storm understand the Zohar. That that Vayigash Elav Yehuda is a kiyum of the din, two dinim actually, they're from the same shorish, songs are. Smichus kula l'tfila, Vayigash elav Yehuda, smichus kula l'tfila, and not being mafsik between tefillin shel yad and tefillin shel. No, it's all in the beginning of Parsha. And then said it's talking about bets. That's young. Yehuda and Yosef is kula. Vayigash elav Yehuda, smichus kula l'tfila, and also not being mafsik, being masmech tefillin shel yad and tefillin shel rosh. So, now, indeed, in the Haftarah, we talk about in the future, the big healing of Am says, Ephraim lo yatzuras Yehuda, Yehuda lo yatzuras Ephraim, Yehuda, and Ephraim, which is Yosef's son, get together finally. That is the union that we're waiting for. It's going to happen only loss of level. It was only like a precursor. The grand unification happens, around Binyamin, but it's also clear. No adu yachdav. They got together over Binyamin, like Gula and Tefillah, like Tefillin Shah and Tefillin Shah. So seems to me, based on things that it says in the Spartan, right? You take a look at, and we discussed this a little bit in our book also. Yosef and Yehuda, they have intertwined lives. As Yehuda sold Yosef out, and immediately after that goes, the Torah detours into Yehuda's story and then resumes with Yosef. They're like very intertwined, these guys. And they have a rivalry that doesn't stop because generations later, Rechavam and Yeravam, Yehuda, they just couldn't get it together, and there's this kingdom split. And it's interesting. They have their issues around Binyamin, right? Around Binyamin. Why did Yeravam outlaw Aliyah L'Regel? They shouldn't see him standing and Rechavam sitting in the Azor. Gamrin and Yeshiva Lazar Malchei Beis David Bilvad. The Bnei Malchei, they're allowed to sit in the Azor. He's not allowed to sit, and people would see that, and it would be embarrassing. It would be like an indication, like Rechavam's the real king. So he outlawed Aliyah L'Regel. He set up roadblocks, and it declined even to setting up a different religion. He made his own, Iglei Zav, right? They have very dissimilar lives. Yosef and Yehuda. We'll get to Binyamin in a second. Right? They're very dissimilar. They are really opposite characters. Yosef is a guy that he sets his mind to something, he's matzliach, right? Except, interestingly enough, and what he's upset about is he never gets credit. He does all the work, and he's good at it. He never gets the credit, right? So whether it's base Potiphar doesn't do anything. He runs the household. But he's not, and over there he had to learn his place, because with his brothers also he knew his koach, right? He knew his kochos, and he wanted to be king. They rejected him. So this is his learning experience, in Mitzrayim, that he's got to do all the work and still be in second place. Well, Tifar does nothing, and Neno Garo Babai says, and the whole difference between me and him is that you're his wife. And he has to respect that. He does all the work. Then he gets shot into the bore, right, into the Beis HaSoar. He does all the work. The Sar Beis HaSoar does nothing. He leaves it up to Yosef to manage the whole slammer, right? Right? No, really. It's all black and white and sukkah, right? And Yosef gets nobody. He's the Sar Beis HaSoar, right? Not Yosef, right? That happens, right? Ani power, raka kisegdar. The only difference between me and you is that I sit on the throne and you don't. You have to, and don't you forget it. Aaron wants it, right? But he's running the country, Right for me, I'd assassinate Paro and take over and does all the work. Right? Right? Paro was Biden. Right? Doesn't do a thing. Everyone else is going to run. God. Right? These leftists are going to run the country. Whatever. Yeah, just shouldn't give him the codes. Just don't give him the codes. It's the phone number of some girl whose hair he wants to sniff. I'm telling you. Right? The power was Biden, right? Yosef was running everything. He's not the president. No, he's not the Melech. Right? That's why it's going to be lost in level. Mashiach ben Yosef, if it seems from the Rishonim, it's mashma, the HaGaon says black and white. Ram doesn't bring down Mashiach ben Yosef anywhere. That Mashiach ben Yosef is not mukhrach. Except that we might be able to skip. And the revised HaGaon supposedly says that before. It's not mukhrach, but if there will be a Mashiach ben Yosef, right? If we don't skip, he'll do all the work, do big milchamas. He's going to die in war. He's going to die. The Navi talks about the husband, on Mashiach ben Yosef. He's going to be killed in battle. Do a lot of heavy lifting, and and as opposed to Yehuda, right? Seemingly, he's always failing, but his failures come out to be hatzlacha, right? Yehuda and Tamar. Even Mechiras Yosef, right? Which was his idea. So the Yosef says, right? Even Mechiras Yosef himself admits, Yehuda, it was Yehuda's idea. It was by divine plan. Because I have to come now, because now I'm sustaining you. That's how you're going to survive the Rav, and that's how we're going to become a great nation right here in Mitzrayim. It was all divine plan. Atem chashavtem l'ra, Elokim chashav l'tov. So from Mechiras Yosef, all started with Tamar. Right? He thought he was the nechshol nezaina, and in the end, it was by the playbook of Matan Torah, was like a type of yibum. Lo Yosef od l'dat, according to some, is that he means he kept on. Lo Yosef didn't stop. He stayed married to her. Whatever. According to Matan Torah, and from there came the whole line of Mashiach, and we have similar things later. David and Bathsheba. No, that he's a pawn of the higher power. He's a pawn of the higher power. Yosef is, no pawn. He does what he thinks is right, and he makes the right choices, and Hashem, grants him hatzlacha because he chose right. It's b'derech shalom rotzech molich also, and they chose the right derech. Right? It's not Yehuda. Yehuda is he's on the adventurous scenic route as a pawn of the higher power. Right? And even his seeming failures, since he didn't choose it b'das, on purpose, either like by Yehuda's case, the friend was too great, like Chazal said, the Malcham Amuna al Taiva, just made it impossible for him to pass that test. Or by Divrei Torah, he had a certain cheshbon, right? Whatever, of course, from a strict halachic point of view, it was an error, right? But being a pawn of a higher power. Right, and Am Yisrael has this duality, right? That we V'amlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh. We have to serve our Kodesh Baruch Hu. Do a good job. Do a good job. Choose correctly and do a good job. You'll be graded on your performance. Right? Also, Segula. We're just chosen, and Rebbe uses us as a pawn in his game. Right? He sends us to this goes, that goes, to cause the message of the Torah to be spread. we're the ball in the God's game. He promised you get kicked around on that mahalach. But Hashem has a mission for destiny. He's going to bring it to fruition through the Jewish people. That's why certain events befall us that seemingly are not, there's always a correlation of Mida Keneged Mida, but sometimes it seems a little bit out of proportion also. Because there's also a mission, there's also another aspect, there's a higher plan that's beyond our schar bonus, because God chose us to be his piece on the chessboard. And that's the rule that Yehuda plays, right? Now, in the human experience, right, that's our tension between hishtadlus and bitachon. Well, you got to make a plan. You got to do what seems right, and ein somchin al hanes, right? In bitachon, it's the opposite. It's bittul, total bittul hadas, and you just put yourself in Hashem's hands. That mahalach, you do it because there's no more, from your perspective, you have no more moves to take. You move out to yourself, totally takar. And in that mahalach, you're mitzapel a nace. You need a nace. Right? In that mahalach, right, you got no choice. Right? You go into the bitachon mode because you're out of options. All right? And once you're out of options, you might as well be mitzapel a nace. Afil cherav chadam nunachas al tzaboro. This girl says basically up from David Melech, right? Al yimnatzu b'derach. You never lose hope. B'derach hateva is not. But that's that's when it's hopeless. When there's something to do, you do. You fight back. So, this is and also, that's the difference between avoda, like korban, and tefillah. Now, once upon a time, I mean to say, originally, by original design, avoda and tefillah were not one and the same. Because, there's a mitzvah say to bring the korban tamid every day. We'll talk about in the Rambam. There's a separate mitzvah say doraisa to daven every day. Now, every day doesn't mean by some mitzvah say shazman groma. It means constantly. As Ramda holds women are chayav in tefillah. It's not. That's what it means. B'choyim doesn't mean once every 24 hours. It means constantly. That's what it's just about. Constantly. It never stops, right? You can always stop, right? The question is whether there's a minimal obligation once a day, right? All right. And kamokam la'arich. So now our tefillas bisman hazeh, right, are also connected korbanos to supplement. Right? And Ezra Sofer saw that coming, not because we're metakin tefillas and metakin my tefillah connected the korbanos. They knew the day would come, right? But so we're accustomed to it. Tefillah is b'makam korban. It wasn't always that way. Two different things, two different mitzvahs. Right? There's the avoda of the tmidim, right? Tmidim kesidram utsafim kilchasam, and tefillah, two separate mitzvahs, right? We combine them because we don't have some shama parms faseno, right? Was really supposed to be, and by original design, there's a very different mechanism. These two different mitzvahs, these of avoda, and tefillah, right? And one could say avoda, you give, you get, right? You give a korban is not, not that he needs it, but still that's the deal. He doesn't need it. He doesn't need anything, right? You give him his nachas ruach, you give him his korbanos. Right? And so he responds and gives you shefa. You give him, he gives you that. Right? Okay. And we always get the better end of the deal. Okay, but it's a deal. It's an exchange. We're not, you should do avoda lishma, not al minas, but it's still the dynamic give, get. Even though it shouldn't be the kavanah should be just purely shem shemayim. Tefillah is not that way. I have nothing. You're everything. You're makir, that he is, tefillah is total his spotless. total his body. Total like Rebbe, I need you. I need you. Right? And then fakir, the ikar tefillah should daven to come me oitzer matnaschinam. Right? Rebbe, I need you. It's total his spouse coming as needy and just needing, right? Right? Tefillah la'ani kiyato. Yeah, actually, not coming as an usher that we're doing business. Right? So the avodah of tefillah, total is batlus, and the avodah is a korbanah. Of give. Rebbe Hashem gave you, give him back, and he'll give you in response. Right? And that's but Rebbe Hashem wants both from us. Amlechas kohanim v'goy kodesh, and what recently school and mikol. He wants us to work for him, do a good job, and he'll reward us. He also wants us to annul ourselves. Right? And if it would be on the same playing field, it would be like a contradiction. But it's not a contradiction, because one is on the outside, the other one's on the inside. So it's not a contradiction, spatially speaking. Because klape chutz, listen, you're graded on your performance. Graded on your performance. Right? But klape pnim, right? Ezu avoda sheboleiv zu tefillah. So even though there's a din azah, right? Yachtoch b'svasa, but avoda sheboleiv. Lovdo b'chol levav. It's internal. The main part of tefillah is, it's just not finished until you say it. But it's what's in your heart. That's why the Ishbitzer points out that any tefillah that you think wasn't answered, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going to prove to you didn't really daven it. B'leiv shalom. Right? So you have to understand, God hears your thoughts just as loud as He hears your words. So if you're insincere in your heart, you don't really think you really need it. You really should. All those fakas He hears just as loud as what you actually say. Right? That's what really lost in love. Any tefillah you say, I daven and you didn't answer me. Right? Well, since I hear your thoughts just as loud, this is what you were thinking at the time. You didn't really ask for it, right? But it's b'fnim, and that's the, of course, we're supposed to try to pull those two together. So smichos gula tefillah. So like Rashi says, right there on that Gemara, presumably it's from a Chazal, right? It's all good tefillah. That's a motchel. And when you say geula, you talk about Rebbe Hashem, we have a certain track record over here. You're our savior. You pull that, and you like it when we recall that, and we talk about all the times you regale us. Right? That's like knocking on the door. Knocking on the door. Because there's such thing as also in a transactional relationship of for old time's sake, right? For old time's sake, right? Transactional relationship, right? Old time's sake. Let alone if the Rebbe Hashem gets shevach from hearing all those gulas that he did for us, right? And then that's gula. And then when Rebbe Hashem opens the door, that's tefillah. And that's so if you're not so called tefillah, it's like you walked away from the door just as he opened. Think about the mashal. So gula is on the outside, knocking on the door. The door opens to the inside. That's where you're supposed to make your bakasha. Means gula is on the outside. Tefillah is when a portal to the inside is open. Because ultimately, on the inside, there's nothing you could do to really deserve that position other than pure annulment. As much as you do, you still don't deserve it. Right? You can do. Right? And that's smichos gula tefillah. I must have seen this in one of the storm combined storm of the Ishbitzer, because it's just the word is too good for me to have thought of it by myself. I saw in the base. We have this Chazal by B'chametz. Whatever you can. Shar Muvatlo. You go as much as you can. What's beyond you, bit. So his bottles. I have to go in, right? That's beyond where you reach. That's by his bottles. But you're not going to go directly in until you do work that you can do on the outside. Right? You can't, the Rebbe wants both from us at the right time, in the right place, in the right context. That's the big trick. That's the big trick of the whole issue. All right? So now let's just first thread through the parsha, and then we're going to go back to Murray Barabi, what I was oming on just today, when I was thinking about it. Then we'll tell stories, but the point is like this, Binyamin is the base of Mikdash. Okay, do it. But especially the Bechalko Shel Binyamin. Mikdash is a base of it's also a base tefillah. Derech habayis hazeh. Then lots of base tefillah. There's like a duality in base of Mikdash. The makom where we do the avodah, we give the korbanos. It's a crip pro korban. Not like Biden, but whatever. So I can't that's from politics, because Moshe had a MAGA agenda, wanted to make Am Yisrael great again. Really? No, really. That was. We'll talk about that in a second. Right when we start a segue into a bit of the recollections, but the basically we do the avodah, and b'schus the korbanos get b'schus the nesachim we get that, and b'schus base tefillah. Interesting in the Rambam, that holds it's a mitzvah sasei doraisa, right? But there's no nusach midoraisa, no zman midoraisa, right? Go ahead for that. It's not a mitzvah shazman grum. There's no kavod zman, right? But there is one halacha according to Ram that is doraisa. Much from say from mitzvahs to face the base of mikdash, wherever it might be. So it's much from the Ram that when a yid spoke daven freestyle before Ezra Sofer and they actually ruined everything. Formalized prayer and Zmanei Tefillah, of course, right? Before that, it's much the Rambam. If you read God, a yid would just face the Mishkan or the base or wherever it was and just say wherever. But that was halacha. The one din doraisa there is in Tefillah is face the Mishkan or the basement wherever it might be in the wall, right? That's it. That's the one din doraisa. I don't know if it's market, it's not market, but it's Masharam. That's the one din daraisa that there was. It's not market. Face the base of Mikdash. Right? Like the Parshas says, going back to like focus there. Right? Amazing thing. Right? It's a base tefillah. All the tefillahs go through there. So Binyamin, who's the base mesh, has to hold together Yehuda and Yosef. Yosef is the avoda. Chor Shoro Hadalo, the workhorse, right? The work ox. And Yehuda is tefillah. One is on the outside, one's on the inside. Ein yeshiva la'azora baz elamachi beistav bavad. He's like his word. The one who is the guy who's like, that's his his house, his place. Right? They'll look at me as an outsider. Like if I have to stand like the rest of the people. But the base measure is the makom where these two come together, the avoda and the tefillah. Avoda the hishtadlus and the tefillah, which is number one thing about tefillah is bitachon. Gotta believe that, of course, when you read your prayers, gotta believe he's not going to abandon you, gotta believe he can fulfill whatever you want.
I always say that Yosef is tough on
Yehuda.
No, I know. But I'm saying we talk about, let's say, last week's parsha, or being about the introduction, talks about the Ish Neman, Ish Bitachon of Yosef.
Right.
That's why he was punished for 2 years.
No, because he put his trust in the Saramash.
I mean, that's why.
That's like a
He's
lack of
careful.
bitachon. Lack of bitachon. Put his faith into the Sarah Mashkin. That's where, as it were, comes up short. Now the question is, what else should he have done?
No, we're not getting into that yet.
Yeah,
But I'm saying, let's say, we say that
Yaakov's a fast day tomorrow.
the Amuna, we say the Amuna of Yosef has, or that's different than the Bitachon. We say the topic.
No, of course, it's not. Of course, God forbid, it's not the current.
No,
but,
for sure. And I'm saying in terms of his.
yeah, but it's in terms of avoda. In terms of avoda, his derech is just to do what's right and to succeed. That's his derech avoda. He's not on the adventurous route of being a pawn of a higher power. That's why that he has to reconcile himself with. It happens to him. He's not on that track to Etzem. It's not where his head is. It's not.
By Yehuda, right? Yehuda.
Right?
It was just, or it was one of the shots that by Paros, by Mitzrayim.
Right.
About where it says that what's the? There's no person. You just someone's gonna go. Yeah, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen though. It's this.
Yeah, that which made Lechem Yehuda, right? But right, so that's Yehuda, right? But also that and the base of English, which is also Mokum Avon, that's where they get together. And their struggle over Binyamin is also where they get together. Because the base of English is supposed to hold together both Nakudas, and that's what we have to. Lasid Lavo, the Yidden that are on the that are the Yosef type people. These are like the halachic men, right? Right. The guys who these guys, the Mishnah Brewers, and there, whatever, there's that, and then there's the people on the more adventurous route, the Balei Asod. Right, this tension could come up over there potentially. Right, the Balei Asod, it's a balancing act, and we have this in halacha also, but interesting in halacha, and yet yes, yet not, yet yes, yet not. Right, I just the Chassam Sofer was no stranger to couple. But Moshe used to say, Moshe lived this tension, world class Talmud Chacham. And then, and in Seder Taharis, Ad Bedorah, Seder Taharis was special. But he had Chidushim on all. He knew every sugya in Shas. I never, speaking to not a sugya in Shas, he didn't know well with Rishonim, and he had his derech in it, and a lomdish derech, not a, lomdish, no, right? Lomdish derech, right? Right, but but whatever, the literature about, he got attention because of his great interest, right, in Chochmas. I say, these guys who give me funny looks, they ever open up a Chassam Sofer al Torah, Isham Dvarim Noraim. Stuff there, it's awesome. I never even say things. They're such, But he's just saying how these guys don't know. He once said, I was tossing cheer. B'yameinu, Mishu Omer Mashu Min Nesivis HaMishpat, V'Mashu Me'etz Chaim Shel Arizah, I call it so mitzaltzel to davar. Right? All rings the same. I was talking about the shallow. That thought people were misnagdim for very shallow reasons. There's no big situs that he would say in public that's anything worse, even less than type of stuff you can find Chassam Sofer. Chassam Sofer had a big yad in Kabbalah, Kayadua. There's HaRav Nosson Adler, and also in the Haflo is Makabel, and seems in Tzayid from Hafti Haflo also. He was Makabel, as Magid. It's very evident, right? So, but here's the thing. I looked up right before I started, for tonight, just to make sure I remembered it correctly. In Chuvas Chassam Sofer, or Chaim Tzimin Nun Aleph. And on the other hand, don't get me wrong, the Chazal has plenty of chuvas where he just goes talking sod, because someone asked him a question in Ashkafa. But he writes about something that's about minhagim, that we don't know the time. Look, you have to take it on faith, right? If there's minhagei Yisrael, but it says, "B'rim kol ze ani omer," that hama'arvev nigla v'nister zorea kilayim. Ma'arvev, chochmas term, chochmas HaGaon, with philosophy, you're over on lo sachrosh b'shor v'chamor yachta. Right? This is Chasam's over. So you can't miss nigla and nid. Don't mix them up. No, it's kilayim. And Torah and philosophy, Torah Mada, that's lo sachrosh b'shor v'chamor yachta. Right? This Chassam over was no stranger to Nister, and sometimes has chuvas that the whole thing is, Elma. Right? And there's other, when we have a shaila, we deal with it purely from the but poskim will bring from Kisberry all the time. So when yes, when not? No, it's there's a serious question over here. I mean, you can't but what's its place? How do we reconcile the Gemara versus the Zohar and things like that? And can we, if you get a Shiloh, can you just say, I found the Zohar and pass it on? Right? Can you? It's a big issue of tension, even for the people that live in both worlds. There's a natural tension to not live in both worlds. Right? People are into, you would think, into the Lumdus and the Halacha. They don't want to hear from Kabbalah. People in Kabbalah, and it's a davar nifali's bone that the shot is like this. Of course, our Torah includes both, but they're not the same. The Torah includes both, not the same. Moshe davar doime puzzle. Of course, the different pieces fit together, but the two different pieces are different, and they have to be in their right place and only fit together in a certain way. I know, and even within Kabbalah, Moshe gave us a few shiurim on this. There was a big machlokas how much you could explain these sort of Kabbalah, because we put it too much into philosophical terms, and then you made it into science. It's not Kabbalah anymore. Maybe, like we said, lost in translation. But keeping something in its rightful place and on its rightful madrega without taking the boundaries. Now, what does it mean in the human experience? Something that he told me once, right? I was still Bocher, I was trying to make a decision what to do. I said like this: I have lachlit. Yesh te hanagot. Yesh b'derech shalom rotze lelech. Ata machlit. Yesh bitochen. I will be bitochen. Ata asur lachlit klum. You don't decide anything. Zeit patlut. Avim ata kacha chetzi chetzi. Ata nofel ben hakitzot. You're 50-50, you just fall between the chairs. Other. You can't mix up. When it's time for Ishtadlus and Bechira, choose. When it's time for you do like this, 50-50. Regarding this, I'll choose. Regarding this, I can't be bothered. You fall between the chairs. Right? The Ishtadlus got to be Ishtadlus. The B'tachen's got to be real B'tachen. You can't mix the two. There's a time for this one, time for that one. Right? They can't invade. You can't blur the boundaries. They're two different distinct kaichas, but of course there's a time that you have to be willing to flip on a moment's notice from one to the other. But don't make one the other. Right? Don't fall between the chairs. They're two different chairs. Right? Either sit on this chair and you need both chairs, but you have to know when it's time for this one, when it's time for that one. Right? It's in that open, the halacha has to be halacha. The lomdus has to be good lomdus. You're not gonna, you don't resolve the taisvus based on a medrash somewhere, right? Show to a medrash, and then explain the taisvus how be George, right? But sometimes with these, sometimes when they do, there's these 30 sforim, that they touch up a medrash, there's a machlokes between Moshe Rabbeinu and Paro with a yesh breira and breira. You're not learning medrash in its own terms. Come on, it's not, it's a game. You can't blur the boundaries. There's Agoda, and we have the Lamed Beis Midas of Rebbe Lozer ben Osher Aglili, learn Agoda. 32 Midas Shatan dress band when it comes to Agadata. When it comes to halacha, it's only Yud Gimel Mitzvah. You can't blur the boundaries. That's what the Chazal says. You got to be sure in this one, and there is a certain way where they meet. It has to be in a way that they meet in a way that one doesn't dilute the other or blur the other. It has to come together. And indeed, when you learn, a person who has no lumdus, and he goes to learn Kabbalah because he's a spiritual type of guy, that's there. Without those kalim of lumdus, it's not serious. It's just cloudy ideas, right? But on the other hand, when we have a shaila and halacha, right, we have to resolve it from the Gemara with the Darkei HaPilpul. And also speaking cosmically, right? That Kabbalah talks about up there, right, which is a very clean world, and halacha is talking about down here, which is a very dirty world. And we need the pilpul to clean out the dirt. And that's it. So cosmically also, I could explain to you how halacha, a shaila has to be be'ikar resolved with the kalim of halacha, because that's the right thing for the place that we're talking in, right? And Kabbalah, we're talking about in higher limits where there is no rock. You don't need the Darkei HaPilpul, to root out the rock, to uproot, because you're talking pure purity, right? And that's what it says in the Akdamah Divrei Torah, that a person should be, really be a lamdan before he goes into Kabbalah. There are exceptions to the rule, but he says that but b'shleimus is to be a lamdan and then go into Kabbalah. Then it's serious. It says Yahrtzeit was a big lamdan, and every sugin chas he had 6 mahalchim, connected 6 days in a week, right? And one malach al pisod connected Shabbos. But he had 6 drachim, the nigla. But he says something very interesting. And so, brother, it's copying all this form. It says, ideally, in the morning, learn with a lot of pilpul, because pilpul clears the air. The kashas and the terutzim brings clarity and uproots confusion. And then in the afternoon, learn Kabbalah because you cleared the air already. And then you just learn and understand. You don't need to move falpo, right? But you have to first clear the air, right? You have to know. There's the Darkei Nigla, and then Darkei Halacha, and it's also a famous Ramchal. People just quote half the Ramchal. Ramchal talks about in the Yadir MAAMAR that all these anecdotes that talk about the cosmos in a way that astronomy has shown is not the case. The sun doesn't sink into a different dimension at night and things like that. We know it goes around the earth, right? We know that, right? Chazal themselves knew it. Gemara says that kvar hodu chachmei shel. And yet there are anecdotes that don't care. Chazal says Chazal were speaking in previous, in the spiritual realm. The spiritual sun doesn't go all the way around the world. The spirituality of the sun sinks in, never reaches the Western Hemisphere. When I tell you, stick it where the sun don't shine, they mean the Western Hemisphere, right? It's the spiritual sun never makes it across, but the physical sun does, right? So, but it says Ramchal, Chazal never talk b'derech hateva. They're always talking lamala, except when they're talking about Torah mitzvahs, halacha l'maisa. Because halacha l'maisa is here. Then they want you to what teva, nishtana teva. Not, lamata, we're concerned with teva. Lamata, and has to keep everything in context, right? And that's what, and the problem is that, people are like, they talk about right side of the brain, left side of the brain. It's a problem, right? People who are philosophically and spiritually oriented, they don't have interest in the pilpul and the nitty gritty, and people are nitty gritty minded. They don't, and that's a problem. That's the conflict. That's that's kind of akin to the conflict between Yosef and Yehuda, right? Yosef, the tzaddik, who just wants to do the right thing, and Yehuda is a pawn of a higher power, and lives on a different plane, on an inner plane, right? We have to, and the conflict levels it has to be reconciled. The avoda, the halachas, the lamdonim, and the poskim, together with the big bali machshava, right? And this is what Moshe was. Moshe was a synthesis between Yosef and Yehuda, right? He was a world-class Talmud Chacham, Lumdus, and if anything, his Lumdus wasn't so well accepted because he used to challenge all the Achron and all the famous, just the mantras. It's Shapira's Maran is, he told us once in Shapira, the yeshivas. They talk about whether it's a Torah Shalom, Chisar Maisakim, Chisar Smichas Adas. Then Nachon Lefi Kamar. But that Hakir works, some of the Rishon. He was always on the frontiers of science, That's the reason why he's, aside that he got, as it were, pigeon, what do you call it? He got stereotyped. But also, when people listen to his Lumdus, they're sometimes uncomfortable with it because he was not going to repeat, the mantras, the standard Hakirs. He was always looking for the new Yahrtzeit, the new, and he was on the frontiers of Lumdus, right? But the world couldn't be civil, and the world can't be civil. They could be this and that. And so he got pigeonholed or stereotypes being a Baal Machshava. Used to frustrate him terribly, right? But he had the shlemus of both, and he wouldn't mix. He wouldn't mix. Wouldn't blur. The Lumdus was Lumdus, and the Machshava was, real Machshava, explaining the Yahrtzeit as they really are, not trying to describe them with other methodologies or superimpose. Right? Cousin Yossi says he grew up with dogs. He's not scared of dogs.
No.
You also? Anyway.
No, my grandfather. Yeah.
All right, so almost done. But so by him, the Lumdus was Lumdus, the Machshava was Machshava, and yet they also shimmed together in the right place at the right time. Because when they're really saying the same thing, just in different Lashonos, so it's the same thing. When it is, and when it isn't, it isn't. Right? He wanted, and he was really pushing, to try to make the wholesome Ben Torah that be a dayan, a pesach, a London, and have big machshava, right? Because at the end of the day, the v'hayar einenu b'sarasecha v'dabek liben mitzvah talking about, that's in the chochmas hanistar. That's what that's what's invisible. It needs to be v'hayar einenu. That is what the aspect of Torah makes you feel that it's elokus, and you have v'dabek libenu. He was working at it, and he felt that the part of the mediocrity of Al Yisrael, that in general, he was as he got older, he just got more and more frustrated with the generation. Right, so the people were not this and not that. Originally, what he wanted was people were lacking the. Right. Right. Initially, W, can you take her to the back, please? You take her to the back or downstairs, please. Thank you very much. Right. He told us, initially was afraid, he didn't like that, the Olam Yeshivas was, laser focused only on Lumdus and, not the big picture. Didn't want to make Mitsuyonim and call it Torah Kula, which include Chachmas and Nister. But eventually, he just felt that, people were just being shallow, all around. He told us once in here, once in a mood, and he told us the following story. That week, he was teaching in Or Samech at the time, and a Russian bacher that, this had been about, shall we say, had been there 2 years ago. Steiging. The bacher comes out, so it's a HaRav Yechol Shol Sheila. I'm going to ask a question. Yeah, okay. I'm not comfortable with the question. HaRav. It's interesting. It fits with the terminology we're using all the way through. Right? So, HaRav, Ha'im ze nachon she'atorah ze or gadol. True, it's a Torah of great life. Lama kulam po idiot. Right? So why is everyone here an idiot? They start banging on the table. לא ידעתי למה להגיד באמת, למה כולם אידיוטים. He told us once a year, כשקוראים בפרשה, קריאת ים סוף, 10 המכות, אמר, זה אנחנו, מרגיש עם אחר. We really the nation. I went there. It feels like a different nation. It feels like a fairy tale nation. Is that us? Right? And that's why he had, he was Isaac a lot in Bali Tshuva. And he kind of almost given up on the FFB world. They felt at least with Bali Tshuva was starting fresh. And he told me that. He told me I should buy a Bali Tshuva. He made no bones about his critique about the laser focus, the lack of wit, the lack of aspiration. Right? He felt there was lacking of aspiration of greatness even in Nigla, in Halacha, let alone to be Makif. That's what he was. He was a real Ishai Shkolos. Right? That he wanted to have it all and have it all correctly. You want to have it all, like a big tent, like the Democratic Party. If God, they should not get control. But if God's from they do, they will fall apart. It's a bunch of, the only thing that's being ma'ached them is hatred of Trump or a big tent. They're pulling in all different directions here. Socialists, some greedy people. That is not. The whole thing's going to blow up, right? There's and that's the point. Yehuda has to be Yehuda. Yosef has to be Yosef. They have to be who they are, and they have to find a way to get along. That's the trick. Right? The tzaddik and the Baal Tshuva, tzaddik and the halachist and the makubal, right? They have to be who they are. Don't try to be the other guy. That's not the problem. The problem is be who you are and still find a way to coexist and complement each other without being mabater. And that's it. That's what it was. That was like so special that a man shakulobo, he had it all worked out. He had the niggle, he had the nister, and he wanted synthesis, not in that one should dilute the other. No. Everything should stay in context, stay where it's supposed to be, but you switch tracks appropriately, getting up from one chair and say, when it's the right thing to do. And the two things meet where they're meant to meet. Not by Sure. All right, much help, we should try to keep his legacy alive. Stay away from he was hated mediocrity, hated any type of reductionism, and these mindless translations. They'll give us a shifa that we should really be visibly skula mikola amim and vatantil mamlechas kohanim b'goy kodesh. Hi, schusa again later about Kol Yisrael. Oh yeah, sorry. Tfil that's what it means. Tfil Shayad is Maisa, and Tfil Shrosh is Machshava. Omek Alef is Bagos. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Okay.
What do you do?
Cola.